Was Mambo music and dance responsible for the creation of hip hop? I will answer that question in today's video. All right, but first of all, I want to welcome everybody to the channel. If this is your first time, welcome. I would love for you to subscribe. Please share, like, definitely hit that like button. And if you haven't already, even if you want to make another donation, I will welcome that as well. But I want you guys to consider donating to the channel. It will be much appreciated. All right, so let's get into this. Now, there is a video out there that's been out for a lot of years that's entitled From Mambo to Hip Hop, right? And the majority of the video doesn't deal with the Mambo period, but near the end, it does, and it makes certain claims that are troubling. But we're going to get to that later. All right. First, we're going to deal with why I'm doing this video on the Mambo. Someone might ask, well, what does the Mambo have to do with hip hop? But there are a lot of individuals in the Latin community are making this argument. They're trying to suggest that even the music is foundational to hip hop. One such individual we all know is Dr. Cologne. He suggests that the percussion elements that we hear in the b-boy anthems actually come from the Mambo era. And how does he establish that claim? He establishes that claim, or attempts to establish that claim, by suggesting in the 1950s, Black American jazz musicians would sit in with Latino musicians, let's say at the Palladium, and vice versa. And through that exchange and interchange, musical ideas and philosophies were, exchanged, right? And what came out of that for African American percussionists was the idea of putting percussions in their music. Now, he makes this claim because he can't explain away the fact that pretty much 99% of the conga players in these bands are Black American. He can't explain that away. So what does he do? He tries to connect it to the Afro-Cubans. All right? So you guys already know I did several videos debunking this whole myth. So I'm going to cite a video that I found. Well, actually, Hip Hop Historian had presented it on his feed, on his channel. So I'm going to feature that video or a portion of it in my presentation to make that point as well. I want you to take a listen to this gentleman explain the difference between African American style of drumming versus Afro-Cubans.
Versus the quote-unquote Afro-Cuban thing. If you go back and think about West African hand drumming, whether it's djembe stuff or not even just West African, continentally African, Pan-African drumming, even the stuff that Steve Friedson researched in Eastern Africa, there's a lot of hand-to-hand stuff, right? It's hand-to-hand.
Yeah.
And that's what, for the most part, that's what American conga playing is hand-to-hand stuff, for the most part. And I sort of started thinking about that from the perspective of like even drums, stick drums, like rudimental drumming is about going hand-to-hand or some doubles or some flams or whatever. But I mean, it's mostly about things moving from one limb to the other. We don't get into doing weird ostinato stuff until the invention of the drum set, and we go, oh, that part used to be played by that guy, and that part used to be played by that guy. So now I have to do things that are lining up in weird ways, and it creates an American drumming system. I guess my point here is we call it like the American way because the soul drummers and the soul conga players and this, pop players, and Cyril Neville in New Orleans, a lot of the New Orleans conga players, really are not using the techniques that were created in Cuba by the Afro-Cubans. But if you go back 2 generations before back to Africa, they're playing hand to hand, so yeah, is there a right way or a wrong way? No. There's a groove, that's what matters. Can you get the sounds out of the drum? That's what matters.
So here's this guy, and I'm going to give you some of his bio in a second. Now he's explaining that there is no connection. So for Cologne to continue to make this claim that somehow we learned from them is totally ridiculous. I featured Preston Epps in one of my videos. He learned directly from Africans. Now you got to keep in mind, they seem to forget that many of us African Americans are descendant of Africans. We never lost the ability to make rhythm. The drum is just a vehicle to express it. So we express our musicality in our way. We're not taking any cues from the Afro-Cubans. So let me tell you a little bit about this gentleman that we just featured in this portion of this video. By most standards, one might consider him an expert. He not only is he a teacher, but he's also a practitioner. He also plays congas and teaches as well. Now, his education. Let's discuss his education. He's a professor at the University of North Texas, Master of Science in Interdisciplinary Studies, emphasis on ethnomusicology. Let me tell you what ethnomusicology is. Ethnomusicology is the multidisciplinary study of music in a cultural context, investigating social, cognitive, biological, comparative, and other dimensions involved other than sound. So this guy he takes this stuff deep. And through his experience and knowledge, he can definitively say that there is no connection between Afro-Cuban percussions and African-American percussion styles. So to try, and I'm speaking about Cologne, for Cologne to try to draw this link between the two is without basis and it's without evidence. Now, when people hear the word mambo, immediately they assume a Latin dance, right? And by all accounts, it is a Latin dance, but the Latin dance that we refer to mambo in America is a lot different than that in Cuba. We have to understand that there's an infusion of African American dance styles and steps within the dance of mambo in America, in New York City. Let me tell you what mambo is. Mambo music, which emerged in Cuba in the 1940s, but was popularized in Mexico and New York, blended jazz harmonies and instrumental with Afro-Cuban rhythm. Now they're talking about the music right here. Mambo dancing involved in New York City in the late 1940s and became an international dance craze by the early 1950s. The dance was based on the Cuban sun with the addition of turns borrowed from American swing. That's jazz, American dance, swing, and solo dance steps adopted from Cuban rumba, Puerto Rican bamba, and African-American jazz dance. The dance emerged through the intermingling of the traditions of New York dance halls, especially Harlem Park, and then it goes on to talk about at the Palladium. Okay, so here we have a description, and within the swing dance culture, there is the Lindy Hop. All right, let's move into the dance now. Now, there is also a claim out there by many Latinos that breaking and the precursors started with them. And here you're going to have listen to this particular gentleman actually try to rewrite African-American dance culture and try to make it appear that Latinos created all these particular dances.
A lot of people are not aware that in the 50s, in the Palladium, they was already doing certain dances that they think is from this era. But actually in the 50s, they was already doing it. Like the break dancing, the pop locking, the voguing, the electric boogaloo, like we call it, but they call it pop locking today. So these are the moves that were the foundation at the beginning, which evolved into other forms of dance.
Now, all of those dances were created by us But for some reason, he's going to claim it for Puerto Ricans. So this is the colonizer mindset. Something was already created, but nope, we're going to claim that. All right? Let me provide another example.
Trying to find that connection between what happened then and what's happening now. When I look at some of the old footage of some of, like, for instance, in Mambo Madness, these guys dancing, boom, and they drop on the floor and do some around the world front sweeps, I get chills.
So here is another example of Latinos associating those movements with the Palladium and indirectly and directly suggesting that it was Latinos who did these things. Now, that's just blatant disrespect, because anybody with any research ability would know a lot of those dances and dance steps come from foundational Black Americans. But pride, it won't allow you to do any research. So you're going to go what makes you feel good. Let me play this other example. Now, this is another video that a lot of Latinos point to. This is Roberto Roena of the Fania All-Stars doing some breaking, or some moves that would be associated with breaking, with some James Brown moves as well. So check this out. There you go with the helicopter into the knee walk. Then you're going to do some fancy footwork from James Brown and go to a split. There we go. Now, when some Latinos look at that, they be like, damn, did we do that? So it's this revisionist history thing, and they forget all about our pioneers, the individuals that precede them by decades. And what do they say is the reason why they disrespect those guys? Well, they weren't dancing to breakbeats, but neither were these guys. But the difference is our pioneers and progenitors are Black American. So they don't count in the eyes of Latinos. So when you hear us say you're anti-Black, that's what we're talking about. You have no problem acknowledging your people and saying that they were pioneers, that breaking comes from you. But when it comes to our pioneers, you totally disrespect them. So you don't have to use the N-word to be anti-Black. You just have to be disrespectful. Now, Brother Roberto Roena, he did those moves, and guess who else did those moves probably just about 20 years earlier? Conrad Buckner. We all seen his video. If you haven't, let me remind you what we're talking about. Now watch Brother Conrad go to work, doing the helicopter, just like Roberto. Russian, series of splits, doing the knee walk, back up, brother still going. Now, the Latinos will dismiss him, just like they dismiss brothers like from the Mills Brothers doing the leg sweeps, make fun of the period, don't acknowledge the moves as being foundational to breakdancing. Now, here's another clip by the Mills Brothers who were doing the helicopter even 10 years before Conrad. There they go. There's nothing new under the sun. Nothing new under the sun. And see, if you did research, you would know that, let's say 9 times out of 10, if there's a dance maneuver in America, 9 times out of 10, African Americans have something to do with it. That's a no-brainer. So when we say you're disrespectful and anti-black and colonized, this is what we're talking about. All right? All right. So with that said, I'm going to end this video. I just wanted to make this quick point. There's so much more I wanted to talk about, but I don't need to make this video that long in order to make my point. So hopefully you enjoyed the information. And so until the next time, peace.